Kira's hands didn't shake as she poured the wine at table 12. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this restaurant, not serving this table, not within breathing distance of the man whose family might have orchestrated her sister's death. The azure pearl glittered like a jewel box designed to hide bodies. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across white silk tablecloths. The air smelled of ginseng-infused broth and imported orchids and something her survival instincts recognized as danger. Min-Jun Park sat at the table's center like carved ice. Charcoal suit tailored with military precision. Black hair swept back from features that understood beauty and cruelty weren't opposites. His stillness was the most unsettling thing. While his fiancée laughed and her parents gestured expansively, he simply watched, calculated. Kira had seen predators before. Growing up in Atlanta's hardest neighborhoods had taught her that. But this man wasn't just dangerous. He was inevitability wrapped in Italian wool and Korean discipline. She poured champagne with the kind of smile she'd perfected over 6 years. The expression that said, "I'm here to refill your glass and I don't exist beyond that." 6 years of practice had made her an expert at disappearing in plain sight. 6 years since Imani died and the police called it a random mugging, and Kira learned that asking the wrong questions got you killed. Yuna Chen's hand rested possessively on Min-Jun's forearm. The diamond on her finger could have fed Kira's entire old neighborhood for a year. Everything about her screamed old money merging with new power. Isn't this romantic? Her voice carried that particular musical quality of someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. My parents flew in from Hong Kong just for tonight. The celebration has to be perfect. Everything Min-Jun does is perfect. Senator Chen beamed with the kind of satisfaction that came from brokering deals that changed the world. Silver hair, expensive suit, hands that had probably signed legislation and death warrants with equal ease. His wife matched him in calculated warmth, designer dress, pearls that cost more than Kira's entire existence, eyes that assessed Kira for exactly 2 seconds before dismissing her as furniture. Then Kira saw the tattoo on Yuna's inner wrist. A lotus flower with 7 petals, a serpent coiled through the stem. The red phoenix mark. Chinese organized crime. Kira's entire body went cold. That symbol. She'd seen it in Imani's apartment after her sister died, spray-painted on the wall above where they found her body. The police had dismissed it as gang graffiti. Random violence in a bad neighborhood. Case closed. But Imani had been an investigative journalist for the Atlanta Constitution. Had been researching connections between Asian organized crime syndicates and political corruption in major American cities. Had told Kira 3 weeks before she died that she was close to breaking something huge, something that went all the way to Washington. Then Imani went out for coffee and never came home. Beaten to death in an alley. Wallet gone. Phone gone. All her research files mysteriously corrupted on her laptop. And now here was Yuna Chen, daughter of a United States senator, wearing the red phoenix mark like jewelry, about to marry into New York's most notorious Korean crime family. Not a merger. A hostile takeover. Kira's trained eye caught movement she shouldn't have noticed. Yuna's hand drifted below the table. Casual, natural. Her fingers found something small and metallic hidden in the folds of her dress. Across the restaurant, a man in server's uniform stood too still near the kitchen entrance. Another by the emergency exit. Their posture wrong. Their attention too focused on table 12. This wasn't an engagement dinner. It was a kill box. Careful. Min-Jun's voice cut through her panic like a blade through silk. Deep, controlled, carrying an accent that suggested Seoul boarding schools and Ivy League universities. That bottle costs more than most people make in a month. I apologize, sir. Kira's hands steadied through sheer force of will. The voice that came out wasn't hers. It was the character she'd built. Alex, the invisible waitress. The woman who asked no questions and remembered no faces. His eyes locked onto hers. Dark as midnight, missing absolutely nothing. She felt pinned in place by that gaze, dissected, evaluated, catalogued as either threat or irrelevance in the space of a heartbeat. Something in his expression shifted. A flicker of recognition that made no sense because she'd been so careful. 6 years of being invisible. 6 years of changing her name, her hair, her entire existence. "You're new here." Not a question. An observation delivered with the precision of someone who noticed everything. "For months, sir." His head tilted fractionally. The movement reminded her of a wolf scenting prey. "What's your name?" "Alex." The lie came automatically. Everything else about her identity had been buried 6 years ago when Imani died and Kira learned that curiosity was fatal. "Alex." He tested the word like tasting wine. "You seem nervous." Yuna's laugh cut through the tension, high and brittle. "Min-Jun, darling, you're terrifying the poor girl. Let her work." But he didn't look away. And in that moment, Kira saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. He wasn't just watching her. He was reading her. Seeing past the uniform and the fake name and the carefully constructed invisibility. "Am I making you uncomfortable, Alex?" "Oh, sir." Just focused on providing excellent service. Something flickered across his face. Amusement maybe. Or recognition of a lie well told. Outside the window across the street, a flash of red light on a rooftop. Laser sight. Sniper. Kira's training from another life kicked in. Imani had taught her things before she died. How to read a room. How to spot danger. How to survive in a world that wanted to devour women who looked like them. She had maybe 10 seconds before the world exploded. Min-Jun raised his glass to toast Senator Chen. His expression calm, completely unaware that he was about to die. Kira moved on instinct. Stepped close enough to pour his wine. Close enough to smell bergamot and something darker, cedar maybe. Close enough to see the faint scar along his jawline. Close enough to whisper 3 words that would destroy her carefully constructed life. "Run. Right now." For one heartbeat, he went absolutely still. Then his hand shot out, grabbed her wrist with crushing force. His body coiled like a spring about to release. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "Who sent you?" The window shattered. "Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start this journey together, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across continents. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories. So find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before." Min-Jun moved like violence given form. He flipped the table with one hand while dragging Kira down with the other. Crystal exploded into diamonds. Wine splattered like blood across white silk. Yuna's mother screamed. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. The fake servers produced automatic weapons. The senator's security detail returned fire. Chaos bloomed like roses in candlelight, beautiful and terrible and absolutely lethal. Min-Jun's hand never left Kira's wrist. He pulled her toward the kitchen, his body shielding hers. His movements precise despite the pandemonium. Guards materialized beside them, forming a protective wedge, pushing through the screaming crowd. The kitchen was all stainless steel and fire and shouting chefs diving for cover. Min-Jun didn't slow. He kicked open a service door and pulled Kira into a narrow corridor that smelled like garbage and rain. Behind them, the restaurant sounded like a war zone. Glass shattering, people screaming. The sharp crack of gunfire echoing off marble walls. "Move." His voice was winter itself. The hand gripping her wrist felt like iron wrapped in silk. She stumbled after him, her server shoes slipping on wet pavement, her mind trying to process what had just happened. They burst into an alley. Rain hammered down from a black sky. Car waited, engine running, doors open. One of the guards took the driver's seat. Min-Jun shoved Kira into the back and followed, slamming the door as the vehicle peeled out with enough force to slam her against the leather. The guard in the passenger seat spoke rapid Korean into his phone. Blood seeped through his jacket sleeve. Min-Jun leaned forward, completely focused, giving orders in that same controlled voice he'd used asking for wine. Then he turned that predatory attention back to Kira. His hand now held a gun. When had he drawn it? Who sent you? Answer carefully. I just saved your life by listening to you. Give me a reason not to reconsider that decision. Rain hammered the windshield as the car screamed through Manhattan's side streets. Kira's dress uniform clung to her skin where Min-Jun had dragged her through the downpour. Her wrist throbbed where his fingers had gripped hard enough to leave marks. No one sent me. Her voice came out steadier than her heartbeat. I recognized the setup. Chen's. I knew what was about to happen. How? The word landed like a knife between them. 'Cause I've seen it before. She met his eyes, refusing to flinch despite the gun pointed at her midsection. Your fiancé had a weapon. Her security weren't security. They were positioned for a crossfire. And there was a sniper on the building across the street. I've studied tactical scenarios. I know what an assassination looks like. Min-Jun's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. He glanced at the guard in the passenger seat, spoke in Korean. The man listened to his phone, then responded in the same language. Confirm. Min-Jun's voice stayed level. 3 shooters on the adjacent rooftop. The guard switched to English, probably for Kira's benefit. Professional-grade rifles. Chen is missing. Her family claims they were attacked too. Senators already spinning it for the media. Attempted assassination by a rival organization. Course he is. Min-Jun's jaw tightened fractionally. The first real emotion Kira had seen crack through that marble facade. Casualties. 2 civilians. 4 of theirs. 1 of ours. The guard's voice dropped. Jay didn't make it. Silence filled the car like a physical presence. The driver took another corner hard enough to make the tires scream. Through the rain-streaked window, Kira caught glimpses of the city blurring past. Neon signs reflecting in puddles. Late-night crowds scattering as the car blew through intersections. Min-Jun's attention returned to her with surgical focus. You knew about the snipers. About the positioning. That's not casual observation. That's training. Who are you really, Alex? The name she'd given him felt suddenly fragile. A paper shield against a man who probably had resources to peel away every identity she'd built in the last 6 years. I'm a waitress trying to survive in a city that eats people like me. She held his gaze. I saw something wrong and I made a choice. That's all. Well, he leaned closer. The gun never wavered. That's not all. You recognized the Chen family specifically. You identified their security as hostile before the first shot was fired. And you warned me instead of running. Those aren't the actions of a waitress trying to survive. Those are the actions of someone with skin in this game. Thunder cracked overhead. The car turned onto a bridge. Below them, the East River churned black and lethal. My sister was a journalist. The truth came out before she could stop it, pulled from some deep place that had been silent for 6 years. She investigated political corruption. 6 years ago, she was killed in what the police called a random mugging. But it wasn't random. Before she died, she sent me files. Evidence. Connections between the Chen family and Chinese organized crime. Money laundering through political campaigns. Assassinations disguised as accidents. I've been trying to understand what she found ever since. Trying to survive long enough to see if any of it mattered. Min-Jun's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Attention releasing or maybe coiling tighter. What was your sister's name? Amani Clarke. Recognition flashed across his face. Brief but unmistakable. The guard in the passenger seat turned to look at her with new interest. Amani Clarke. Min-Jun's voice went very quiet. The investigative journalist who was researching Korean-Chinese criminal alliances in American politics. Who died 6 years ago in Atlanta. Beaten to death in an alley near her apartment. Kira's chest felt tight. 6 years of holding this alone suddenly cracking open. You knew her. I knew of her. Min-Jun lowered the gun fractionally. She reached out to someone in my organization 8 months before she died. Said she had evidence of corruption that went to the highest levels. Said she wanted to make a deal. Information in exchange for protection. What happened? But Kira already knew. Could feel the shape of the answer in her bones. My father refused. Said Clarke was a liability. That cooperating with journalists was bad for business. That American media couldn't be controlled the way Korean media could be. Min-Jun's jaw tightened. 4 months later, your sister died in Atlanta. The investigation ruled it a random robbery. Very neat. Very convenient. The red phoenix mark left on her wall was dismissed as gang graffiti. She didn't have any valuables. Kira's voice broke despite her effort to control it. Imani lived simply. She wouldn't have been targeted for a mugging. She was killed because of what she knew. No. Min-Jun's tone carried something that might have been regret, which is why I always assumed someone murdered her. The question was who gave the order. Now I know. Senator Chin. Yuna's father. The man who was at my engagement dinner, toasting to family alliances and political futures. The car pulled into an underground garage. Concrete pillars stretched into shadow. The driver cut the engine but nobody moved. Rain drummed on the roof like fingers tapping out a countdown. Min-Jun studied her for a long moment. Then he holstered his gun. You saved my life tonight, Kira Clarke. That buys you temporary asylum. But understand this. You're not safe anymore. Yuna's people saw you warn me. Security footage probably caught it. Which means both the Red Phoenix and my own organization are going to want answers about who you are and what you know. How do you know my real name? Because the moment you said Imani Clarke, I knew exactly who you were. Min-Jun's eyes held hers. Your sister's files included photos of her family. I've seen your face before. 6 years younger, different hair but the same eyes. The same expression she had when she was trying to hide fear. You've been running ever since she died, haven't you? New name, new city, new identity. Trying to disappear while carrying everything she died for. Then why keep me alive? Kira heard herself ask. Your father's organization is part of what killed Imani. Why not just finish what they started? Because you're the only person in this city who told me the truth when lying would have been safer. His voice dropped to something almost gentle. That makes you either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which yet. He opened the car door, extended his hand to Kira. She stared at it for a heartbeat. This offering from a man whose world had killed her sister. Then she took it because the alternative was dying alone in the rain. Welcome to my war, Kira Clarke. His voice carried across the garage like a promise and a threat. Let's hope you survive it. The safe house was a penthouse in a building that didn't officially exist on any city records. Min-Jun led her through a service elevator that required 3 different codes and a palm print to operate. The guard whose name she learned was Taeyong swept each floor as they ascended, weapon ready, moving with a kind of precision that came from years of practice. Kira's clothes had dried into uncomfortable stiffness. Her feet ached from running in server shoes. Her wrist throbbed where Min-Jun's grip had left finger-shaped bruises against her dark skin. But she kept her spine straight and her expression neutral because showing weakness in this world was the fastest way to become prey. The penthouse opened into a space that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan's glittering skyline. Minimalist furniture in shades of black and gray and white. Everything pristine and impersonal and carefully designed to reveal nothing about the man who owned it. Min-Jun gestured to a leather couch. Don't touch anything. Don't move unless I tell you to. Taeyong will be outside the door. Am I a guest or a prisoner? You're alive. His tone suggested that should be answer enough. Stay that way by following instructions. He disappeared into another room. Kira heard water running, drawers opening and closing. The quiet efficiency of someone who'd performed this post-crisis routine 100 times before. She moved to the window despite his orders. Below, the city sprawled in neon and shadow. Millions of people living their lives, completely unaware that in a restaurant across town, people had died tonight. That somewhere in this glittering maze, her sister's killers were still breathing, still powerful, still untouchable. You don't follow instructions well. Min-Jun's voice came from behind her. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black shirt. His wetsuit replaced. He carried a first aid kit in one hand and 2 glasses of amber liquid in the other. That's going to be a problem if you want to survive the next 48 hours. I needed to see the city. To remind myself it's still there. Why wouldn't it be? Because sometimes when your world explodes, you forget other people's worlds keep spinning. She accepted the glass he offered. What is this? Whiskey. Drink it. You're in shock whether you realize it or not. She took a sip. The burn grounded her, pulled her back into her body. Min-Jun set the first aid kit on the coffee table and gestured to the couch. Kira sat this time, too exhausted to argue. He knelt in front of her and reached for her wrist. She flinched reflexively. He paused, his dark eyes meeting hers with unexpected patience. I need to see the bruising. I might have grabbed you too hard in the chaos. The gentleness in his voice was somehow more unsettling than the gun had been. She extended her arm. His fingers were careful now, turning her wrist to examine the purple marks blooming across her brown skin. His touch was clinical, professional, but she felt it everywhere. Nothing broken. He applied gel with surprising care. You'll bruise, but it'll fade in a few days. Any other injuries? Just my pride and my career. I'm guessing waitressing at the Azure Pearl isn't an option anymore. His mouth quirked fractionally. Well, you're effectively dead to your old life as of tonight. Alex the waitress ceased to exist the moment you warned me. The question is who you become next. The television mounted on the wall suddenly flickered to life. Taeyang must have turned it on from somewhere. News footage filled the screen. Shaky cell phone video from the Azure Pearl. The chaos of the attack. People screaming, glass shattering. And there, crystal clear, was Kira leaning close to Min-Jun seconds before the shooting started. The news anchor's voice cut through the room. Authorities are seeking this woman for questioning in connection with tonight's attack on the Park family. Sources close to the investigation suggest she may have been working with the assailants. Min-Jun muted it. They're already spinning the narrative. By morning you'll be a terrorist, a radical, an accomplice. The Red Phoenix is very good at controlling stories. Kira's reflection stared back from the dark TV screen. A stranger's face. Someone dangerous. Someone hunted. Everything she'd worked so hard to avoid for 6 years, materialized in a single evening. Can't go back. The words came out hollow. To my apartment. My other jobs. Anyone who knew me. It's all gone. Min-Jun moved to sit beside her on the couch. His shoulder nearly touching hers. Welcome to being dead. It's lonely at first. Then it becomes freedom. Because when you don't exist you can become anyone. Is that what you are? A ghost. I've been dying by inches since I was old enough to understand what my family really does. His voice dropped to something raw. Tonight was just making it official. Kira turned to him, really looked at him for the first time since they'd fled the restaurant. Saw the exhaustion beneath the control. The grief he was too disciplined to show. The weight of carrying a legacy built on corpses. I don't trust anyone who looks calm in the dark, she said quietly. But you don't look calm. You look like you belong to it. Like the darkness is the only place you've ever been able to breathe. Maybe because you're there with me. His hand came up to cup her face. The gesture achingly gentle despite the violence humming beneath his skin. Maybe because for the first time in my life I'm not alone in it. His thumb traced her cheekbone. She should pull away. Should remember that this man's family had refused to help her sister. Should protect herself the way she'd learned to protect herself for 6 years. Instead, she leaned into his touch. Because sometimes survival wasn't about being smart. Sometimes it was about choosing which risks were worth taking. You're not safe anymore, waitress. He murmured, his forehead touching hers. You just joined my war. Outside the storm raged. Inside something dangerous sparked between them. 2 damaged people recognizing each other in the dark. Choosing alliance over safety. Choosing each other despite every reason not to. And somewhere in the city, The people who'd tried to kill them were already planning their next move. The safe house felt different in the gray light of almost dawn. Less like a sanctuary and more like a cage lined with expensive things. Kira stood at the window, watching the city transform from darkness to hesitant morning. Behind her, Min-Jun's team worked in that focused silence that came from years of operating in shadows. She couldn't shake the image that had been burning in her mind for 6 years. Imani's body in that alley. The red phoenix mark spray-painted above her. The casual brutality of it. The way the police had dismissed it as random violence. The way the case had closed before it ever really opened. 6 years. She'd spent 6 years running from a truth she hadn't even fully understood. Had built an entire identity around being invisible when the real monsters had been hiding in plain sight the whole time. Her reflection stared back from the glass. Same face, different woman. The Kira who'd poured champagne at the Azure Pearl last night had died somewhere between the gunfire and the revelation. What remained was something harder. Something that tasted like her sister's memory and her own carefully buried rage. Behind her, she heard Min-Jun giving orders in Korean. His voice had that same controlled precision it always carried, but she could hear the fractures underneath. Could recognize the sound of someone holding themselves together through sheer force of will because falling apart wasn't an option yet. A woman with sharp features and purple-streaked hair approached. "Miss Clarke, I found something else in the encrypted files. Something separate from the financial records." Kira turned. "Show me." The woman led her to a laptop displaying a folder labeled Project Imani. Kira's breath caught. She clicked it open with fingers that wanted to shake but didn't. Documents filled the screen. Correspondence between her sister and someone identified only as MJP. Meeting notes. Surveillance photos. A carefully constructed investigation into the Chen family's political connections. And at the bottom, a contract signed by both Imani Clarke and Min-Jun Park. Kira read it once. Then again. Then a third time because her brain refused to process what her eyes were seeing. Imani had been working for Min-Jun. Not investigating him. Working with him. As a paid informant providing intelligence on Senator Chen's criminal activities in exchange for protection and financial support. The room tilted. She gripped the edge of the desk. "When?" Her voice came out rough. "When was this signed?" The specialist checked the metadata. 9 months before your sister died. 9 months. Imani had spent 9 months secretly working with the Park family. Had taken their money. Had provided them with information. Had trusted them to keep her safe. And then someone had murdered her anyway. "You knew." Kira's voice cut through the room like broken glass. Every head turned. Min-Jun's eyes found hers across the space. "You knew my sister. You worked with her. And you let me stand here thinking you didn't know until tonight." Min-Jun moved toward her. Slow, careful. Like approaching something wounded and dangerous. "My father kept this from me. Imani reached out to me directly, yes. But I thought the deal fell through. I thought she'd changed her mind. I didn't know my father had intercepted our arrangement. Didn't know he'd taken the meeting himself. Didn't know he'd passed her information to the Red Phoenix as a gesture of good faith for the alliance he was building with Senator Chen. You're lying." But even as she said it, Kira wasn't sure. Because the devastation on Min-Jun's face when that news footage had played, that hadn't been fake. That had been the sound of someone's world shattering. Not. He stopped an arm's length away. Close enough to touch, far enough to run. Imani was supposed to be my informant. My way of building a case against the Red Phoenix infiltration of American politics. She was going to help me document corruption while maintaining plausible deniability for both of us. It was a clean play. Smart play. The kind of alliance that could have changed everything. Then what happened? My father found out. Min-Jun's jaw tightened. He'd been monitoring my communications. Saw the contract. Realized I was building something independent of his control. So he intercepted Imani's next message. Set up a meeting. And passed her information to Senator Chen. The Red Phoenix handled the rest. The problem being my sister. The problem being me trying to operate outside his authority. His voice dropped. Imani died because I thought I could outmaneuver my father. Because I believed I was smart enough to build something better while he wasn't paying attention. I was wrong. And your sister paid for my arrogance. Kira wanted to rage at him. Wanted to blame him for Imani's death because anger was easier than grief, and having a target was simpler than accepting that her sister had died in the crossfire of someone else's family drama. But she'd seen his face when he'd learned about the connection. Had heard the rawness in his voice. Min-Jun hadn't killed her sister. But his father's ambition had. And in some ways that was worse because it meant the man standing in front of her was both her enemy's son and her sister's intended ally. Was both complicit in the system that had destroyed Imani and the only person with the power to burn that system down. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice cracked despite her effort to control it. When you figured out who I was. When you realized I was Imani Clarke's sister. Why didn't you say something? Because I didn't know if I could trust you. His honesty was brutal. I didn't know if you were working with the Red Phoenix. If you'd been sent to infiltrate my organization. If your warning at the restaurant was genuine or part of a larger play. I had to be sure before I revealed how much your sister meant to my plans. And now I know my father is still pulling strings from somewhere. Min-Jun's voice went cold. Now I know he's been orchestrating both families from behind the scenes. Now I know the engagement to Yuna was his idea. The assassination attempt was his test. He wanted to see if I'd survive. If I was strong enough to be worthy of inheriting his empire. And when I did survive when you warned me, he pivoted to plan B. Which is making me prove my loyalty by choosing family over everything else. Min-Jun moved to the window. Over justice. Over truth. Over anything that might make me weak in his eyes. Kira moved beside him. Dawn had fully broken now. The city looked clean in the early light. Innocent. Like it had no idea what kind of rot lived in its shadows. There's something else. The specialist appeared with a tablet. The encrypted drive had another layer. Financial records going back 25 years. Your father's been funding political assassinations with Chen money since before Senator Chen was even in office. The Red Phoenix connection isn't new. It's been there from the beginning. They built this alliance a generation ago. She pulled up files. Mounts. A carefully constructed paper trail showing how two families, one Korean, one Chinese, had slowly merged their operations until the distinction between them barely existed. And at the center of it all, orchestrating every move, was Park Dong-min, Min-Jun's father. He's not just a crime lord. Kira's voice was hollow. He's the architect. He built this entire structure. Chen's, the Red Phoenix, the political corruption. All of it traces back to him. Min-Jun's reflection appeared beside hers in the glass. My father doesn't just run the Park family. He runs the entire Korean-Chinese pipeline on the East Coast. Every family, every politician, every corrupt official. He's the spider at the center of the web. And he's been training me my entire life to take his place. But you don't want it. I want to burn it to ash. The words came out quiet but absolute. I want to destroy everything he built. Every alliance. Every corrupt deal. Every blood-soaked dollar. I want to salt the earth where his empire stood and build something clean on top of it. That's a nice dream. Kira turned to face him. But dreams don't survive contact with reality. Your father's too powerful. Too connected. He spent decades building this system. You think you can just tear it down because you're tired of it? Well, his eyes held hers. I think we can tear it down together. Because you have something I don't. What's that? Nothing left to lose. His hand came up to cup her face. The gesture achingly gentle despite the violence humming beneath his skin. You've already lost your sister. Your old life. Your safety. You're not afraid of consequences because the worst has already happened. That makes you the most dangerous person in this room. Or it makes me reckless. Then be reckless with me. His thumb traced her cheekbone. The contrast of his pale skin against her brown skin somehow intimate. Help me finish what Imani started. Help me expose every corrupt connection, every dirty politician, every crime family pretending to be legitimate. Help me burn down my father's legacy and build something that would make your sister proud. And then what? After the burning, after the blood, what happens to us? I don't know. His forehead touched hers. I've never thought past survival before. Never imagined a future that didn't involve dying in my father's shadow. But standing here with you, standing here knowing that you chose to save me when letting me die would have been safer. I want to find out. Kira closed her eyes. Let herself feel the weight of his presence. The warmth of his hand. The steady rhythm of his breathing. Let herself imagine just for a moment what it might feel like to stop running. To stop hiding. To stop living like every day could be her last. Then she opened her eyes and met his gaze. Your father dies by your hand. Her voice was steel. Not a soldier. Not an accident. Not some coward's poison. You look him in the eyes and you make him understand what he took from you. From Imani. From everyone he's ever destroyed. That's non-negotiable. Something flickered in Min-Jun's expression. Respect maybe. Or recognition of someone who understood that some debts could only be paid in blood. Agreed. His hand fell away. But first we need leverage. Evidence so damning that even if we die, the truth survives. Insurance that keeps us breathing long enough to get close to him. The files are a start. Kira's mind was already working. But we need more. We need witnesses. Testimony. Something that connects him directly to Imani's murder in a way that can't be dismissed or buried. The specialist raised her hand. The assassination order would have gone through encrypted channels, but financial transactions leave traces. If we can access the original payment records, we might find proof of who paid for your sister's death. Those records are kept in a secure facility. Min-Jun was already moving, already planning. Red Hook Warehouse District. Technically abandoned but maintained as a data storage site. Limited security, mostly automated systems. Which means your father will know the moment we access it. He'll have built-in alarms, fail-safes, ways to ensure he knows when someone's digging through his archives. Min-Jun studied the map on the tablet. So we need a distraction. Something big enough to pull his attention away from a quiet data breach. Kira looked at him. At the man whose engagement dinner had turned into a bloodbath. At the heir to an empire built on corpses. At the only person in New York who might actually be crazy enough to do what needed doing. Me. The word came out clear. Certain. I'm the distraction. The waitress who warned you. The woman whose face is all over the news as a person of interest in the attack. I'm exactly the kind of problem your father needs to address personally. Absolutely not. Min-Jun's voice went hard. You're not putting yourself in his crosshairs. I'm already there. We both know he's looking for me. That every minute I'm alive is a threat to his carefully constructed narrative. So we give him what he wants. We let him find me. And then he kills you. Not if I'm wearing a wire. Not if I can get him talking. Not if I can make him confess on tape. Kira moved closer. Your father's arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable. If I show up scared and desperate and willing to make a deal, he'll want to gloat. Criminals always want their victims to know how smart they were. You're talking about using yourself as bait in a trap that might not work. I'm talking about finishing what my sister started. Her voice dropped. Imani tried to expose your father and died for it. I'm not making the same mistake. I'm going in prepared. Protected. With backup and an exit strategy. But I am going in because this ends now. Tonight. Before more people die. Silence filled the room. Team watched. Taeyong's expression suggested he thought she was insane but respected the strategy. The specialist looked torn between admiration and horror. Min-Jun stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Taeyong. How fast can you get a wire set up that won't be detected? 2 hours, maybe less if I call in favors. Do it. And get me blueprints of my father's estate. Every entrance. Every exit. Every blind spot in his security. If this goes wrong, I want extraction options. He looked back at Kira. You're not doing this alone. I'll be close. The moment something feels wrong, you abort and I come in. He'll recognize you. Not if I'm properly disguised. His mouth curved into something cold. My father taught me how to disappear. Time to use those lessons against him. The next 2 hours blurred into preparation. Taeyong returned with equipment. A wire so small it could be sewn into Kira's clothing, nearly impossible to detect. A panic button disguised as a pendant on a necklace. A tracker no bigger than a grain of rice that could be swallowed if necessary. You press this, we come in guns hot. Taeyong demonstrated the panic button. No hesitation. No questions. You signal distress and we extract you by any means necessary. Understood. Min-Jun appeared in different clothes. Worn jeans. A leather jacket. Hair styled differently. Contacts that changed his eye color from dark brown to a lighter hazel. A slight prosthetic that altered his nose shape. Not a perfect disguise, but enough to create doubt. Enough to let him get close without immediate recognition. Your father will know eventually. Kira studied him. Even disguised, he knows how you move. How you think. By the time he figures it out, you'll already be wired and talking. The evidence will already be recording. Min-Jun checked his weapon. And if he tries to hurt you, disguise won't matter. I'll put a bullet between his eyes regardless of consequences. The plan crystallized. Kira would surrender herself at a known park front. A tea house in Koreatown where Park Dongmin conducted business. She'd claimed to have information about the Azure Pearl attack. About who'd really orchestrated it. She'd play scared. Desperate. Willing to trade everything she knew for protection. Park Dongmin would take the meeting because he was a predator who couldn't resist the opportunity to toy with his prey. Because he'd want to know what she knew. Because eliminating her would tie up a loose end. And while he was focused on her, while he was monologuing about his brilliance, the wire would be recording. Taeyong's team would be breaking into the Red Hook facility. And Min-Jun would be close enough to intervene if everything went wrong. It was a terrible plan. The kind of plan that could get everyone killed. But it was also the only plan that might actually work. Last chance to back out. Min-Jun stood by the door. The car was ready. Team positioned. The sun had fully risen, painting the city in gold that felt like a lie. We do this, there's no going back. My father dies or we do. Those are the only outcomes. Kira thought about Imani. About 6 years of running. About living in the shadows while the people who destroyed her family walked free. About the red phoenix marks spray-painted above her sister's body. About the cold, casual way powerful men destroyed lives and called it business. I'm not backing out. She adjusted the wire, felt its slight weight against her skin. A technological ghost recording the truth. I'm finishing this. For Imani. For Jay. For everyone your father has ever destroyed. Then let's go to war. Min-Jun opened the door. They descended into the city. Into the bright morning that felt wrong for what they were about to do. Down through the underground garage, into separate vehicles because arriving together would raise suspicion. Kira rode with Taeyong. Min-Jun took his own car with another guard. The rest of the team scattered to their positions. Digital infiltration. Physical backup. Escape routes mapped and memorized. The city hummed around them. People going to work. Living normal lives. Completely unaware that in a tea house in Koreatown, a woman was about to sit down with a monster and try to make him confess to murder. You're braver than your sister. Taeyong's voice was quiet. Imani was smart. Dedicated. But she approached this like an investigation. Like gathering evidence was enough. You understand what she didn't. That some fights require blood. I'm not brave. Kira watched Manhattan blur past. I'm just tired of being afraid. That's the same thing. The tea house was called Moonlight Garden. Elegant. Expensive. The kind of place where deals were made over jasmine tea and rice cakes while bodyguards stood discreetly by the exits. Kira had walked past it 100 times during her years hiding in the city. Had never imagined she'd walk through its doors. She entered alone. Head high despite her racing heart. The hostess looked her up and down with the kind of assessment that came from years of identifying threats. I'm here to see Park Dong-min. Kira's voice stayed steady. Tell him Clarke would like to discuss her sister's death. The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition maybe. Or surprise that anyone would be foolish enough to walk into the lion's den. Wait here. She disappeared into the back. Kira stood in the entrance, acutely aware of the wire against her skin, of the panic button around her neck, of Min-Jun somewhere outside in a car with a gun and a willingness to die protecting her. The hostess returned. Park Dong-min will see you. Follow me. They moved through the tea house, past tables where men in expensive suits conducted business in hushed Korean, past a kitchen where steam rose from pots and the smell of ginseng filled the air, through a private door into a section of the building that tourists never saw. The hallway was elegant. Calligraphy scrolls on the walls, bamboo plants in ceramic pots, the kind of space designed to make people feel simultaneously privileged and trapped. A door at the end opened. The hostess gestured. He's waiting. Kira stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. The room was beautiful. Traditional Korean furniture. A low table set for tea. Silk cushions. A window overlooking a small garden where koi swam in a pond. And at the head of the table, sitting like a king holding court, was Park Dong-min. He looked exactly like an older version of Min-Jun. Same sharp features. Same dark eyes. Same stillness that suggested violence held in check by iron discipline. But where Min-Jun's face carried conflict, his father's carried only certainty. He wore a traditional hanbok, dark silk embroidered with subtle patterns. His hands were clean and manicured and had personally ordered Imani's death. Miss Clarke. His voice was cultured, carrying only the faintest trace of accent. I've been expecting you. Please sit. We have much to discuss. Kira moved to the cushion across from him, sat with her spine straight and her hands folded in her lap. The wire pressed against her skin, recording, storing, preserving every word. You wanted to discuss your sister. Park Dong-min poured tea into 2 cups. A tragedy, her death. Such a promising young woman. So dedicated to her work. It's rare to find that kind of passion anymore. You killed her. The words came out flat. Park Dong-min smiled. I see you've been doing research. That's good. I appreciate thoroughness. It's a quality your sister had. Unfortunately, thoroughness without wisdom is just arrogance in disguise. She came to you for protection. She came to my son for protection because she thought Min-Jun was weak enough to be manipulated. Soft enough to believe that exposing corruption was more important than family loyalty. Park Dong-min sipped his tea. Imani was wrong. Min-Jun may have doubts, may have philosophical objections to how we conduct business. But he's still my son. Still a Park. And Parks don't betray their blood. So you intercepted the deal. I eliminated a problem before it could metastasize. He leaned back slightly. Your sister had evidence of financial connections between my family and Senator Chen's political operations. Evidence of how we've used Red Phoenix resources to maintain control over the East Coast's infrastructure. Evidence that, if published, would have destabilized decades of carefully constructed alliances. Evidence that proved you're a criminal. Evidence that proved I'm successful. His correction was gentle, almost paternal. There's a difference, Miss Clarke. Criminals get caught. I've operated for 30 years without a single conviction. Without even a credible investigation. That's not crime. That's empire building. Kira's hands wanted to shake. She forced them still. You murdered my sister because she threatened your empire. I eliminated a liability because your sister didn't understand how power works. She thought information was leverage. That she could negotiate with me as an equal. That offering to exchange her research for protection made her valuable. Park Dong-min's expression hardened. But information is only valuable if its possessor has the power to use it. Your sister had documentation. I had an organization capable of making her disappear. We were never negotiating from equal positions. You had her beaten to death in an alley. I had the Red Phoenix handle a problem that threatened both our organizations. There's a difference. He leaned forward. Your sister was going to publish her research. She had deadlines, editors waiting. She thought pressure would force me to cooperate. Instead, it forced me to act. 6 months after our meeting, she died in Atlanta. Unfortunate violence. Random mugging. The investigation found no evidence of foul play. Because you controlled the investigation. Because I have relationships that matter. The police commissioner in Atlanta owes favors to people I know. The mayor's campaign was funded through channels I control. The federal agents who might have looked deeper received promotions to other cities. Park Dong-min's tone carried no boast, just statement of fact. Your sister thought she could fight that with journalism, with truth, with moral superiority. She was naive. The Wire was recording every word, every casual admission of murder and corruption, every piece of evidence that would damn Park Dong-min in any honest court. But Kira barely heard it because sitting across from her sister's killer, listening to him explain Imani's death like it was a business transaction, something inside her cracked. All the careful control. All the 6 years of holding herself together through sheer force of will. All of it splintered into rage so pure it felt like dying. Her hand moved toward the panic button. Not to press it. Just to confirm it was there. That Min-Jun was close. That backup existed if she needed it. Park Dong-min noticed. His eyes tracked the movement. You're wired. I wondered if you'd be foolish enough to try that. He gestured casually. 2 men materialized from corners Kira hadn't realized held shadows. Bodyguards. Armed. Professional. They moved toward her with the efficiency of people who'd done this 100 times. Don't. Kira's voice came out steady despite her racing heart. You touch me and Min-Jun brings this building down around you. My son is currently sitting outside in a disguise he thinks I won't recognize. Park Dong-min smiled. I've known he was there since the moment he parked. I've known about this entire operation since you walked into the Azure Pearl last night. Did you really think you could outmaneuver me? That you and my disappointing heir could topple an empire I've spent 30 years building? The bodyguards reached her. Professional hands found the wire, pulled it free, crushed it under a heel, found the panic button, removed it, patted her down for additional devices with clinical efficiency. Nothing else. One of them reported in Korean. But Park Dong-min stood. Miss Clarke, I'm going to explain something your sister never understood. Power isn't about who has the most information. It's about who has the most control. You and Min-Jun thought you were hunting me. But I've been 3 steps ahead since the moment you decided to play hero at my son's engagement dinner. He moved to the window. Outside, the garden looked peaceful. Koi swimming in lazy circles. Nothing suggesting violence was about to erupt. I wanted Min-Jun tested. Wanted to see if he was strong enough to survive an assassination attempt. Wanted to know if he'd choose family or weakness when the moment came. Park Dong-min's reflection watched her from the glass. Unichen was my idea. The engagement. The dinner. All of it designed to force my son into becoming the man I need him to be. By having him murdered. By giving him an enemy to destroy. A betrayal to overcome. A fire to temper him into something useful. He turned. But then you interfered. You warned him. You survived when you should have been collateral damage. And worst of all, you made him feel something besides ambition and rage. Made him believe he could be something besides his father's weapon. I made him realize he doesn't have to be you. No, you made him weak. Park Dong-min's voice dropped to something cold. And I can't have a weak heir. Can't build a dynasty on a man who'd choose a woman over his family's survival. So I adjusted my plans. Let him think he was hunting me. Let him believe he could gather evidence and expose corruption. Let him fall for you so I could use you against him. Kira's throat tightened. Your motivation. He smiled. Because in approximately 10 minutes, My people are going to deliver you to a location where Min-Jun will have to choose. Save you or save himself. Kill me or let you die. Embrace his birthright or cling to the fantasy that he can be something better than his breeding. He'll choose me. No. Park Dong-min's expression carried something that might have been regret in a man capable of that emotion. And that's why I'll have to kill you both. Because a son who'd sacrifice his empire for love is useless to me. Better to start over. To build something new with someone who understands that power requires sacrifice. He gestured. The bodyguards grabbed Kira's arms. She fought reflexively, but they were professionals. Stronger. Trained. They lifted her like she weighed nothing and moved toward a door she hadn't noticed. Hidden in the paneling, leading somewhere she knew she wouldn't survive. My son will come for you. Park Dong-min's voice followed her. He'll bring weapons and rage and whatever remnants of honor he's clinging to. And when he does, I'll show him what happens to Parks who forget that family is everything. That loyalty is absolute. That weakness gets you killed. They dragged her through the hidden door. Down stairs that descended into darkness. Into the kind of basement where screams went unheard and bodies disappeared without a trace. And somewhere above, in a car outside, Min-Jun Park was realizing his father had always been hunting him. The black hood came off in a room that smelled like blood and industrial cleaner. Kira's vision adjusted slowly to fluorescent lights that hummed with a frequency that made her teeth ache. Concrete walls. Metal table. Chair bolted to the floor where they'd strapped her wrists and ankles. Every crime show cliché made real in a space designed specifically for this purpose. 2 guards stood by the door. Different men than the ones who'd grabbed her upstairs. These had the dead eyes of people who'd done terrible things so many times they'd stopped registering as terrible. Just another day's work in the service of Park Dong-min's empire. Time passed. Kira couldn't tell how much. Long enough for her shoulders to ache from the position. Long enough for thirst to make her throat feel like sandpaper. Long enough to understand that making her wait was part of the psychological warfare. Then the door opened and Yuna Chen walked in. She looked immaculate. White dress. Hair perfect. Makeup flawless. The kind of woman who belonged at museum openings and political fundraisers. Not in a torture room. But the gun in her hand suggested she was comfortable in both environments. You should have run. Yuna's voice carried genuine curiosity. That night at the Azure Pearl when you saw what was about to happen. You should have taken the chaos and disappeared. Instead you warned Min-Jun. Why? Kira said nothing. Her training from years of surviving said that engaging was giving them power. That silence was armor. Yuna moved closer. I've been researching you. Kira Clarke. Or should I say Kira Iona Clarke. Age 29. Former journalism major at Columbia until your sister died. Then you vanished. New name. New identity. New life built on being invisible. She traced the gun barrel along Kira's cheek. 6 years in hiding. 6 years running from shadows. Must have been exhausting. Not as exhausting as pretending to love a man you were ordered to murder. Yuna's smile was sharp. I wasn't pretending. I genuinely liked Min-Jun. He's intelligent. Attractive. Has that whole tortured prince trying to escape his father's shadow thing that certain women find compelling. Under different circumstances I might have actually married him. But you tried to kill him instead. Followed orders. There's a difference. She sat on the edge of the table. My family's been allied with the Parks for 2 generations. My father and Park Dong-min built this city's power structure together. Shared resources. Divided territory. Created something bigger than either family could have alone. But lately, Min-Jun has been a problem. Asking questions. Suggesting changes. Talking about going legitimate like that's something crime families actually do. So Park Dong-min ordered his own son's death. Not death. Transformation. Yuna corrected gently. The attack at the Azure Pearl was supposed to fail. Min-Jun was supposed to survive and realize that mercy is weakness. That the old ways exist because they work. That trying to be better than your breeding just gets you killed. But then you interfered. You gave him hope that fighting his father was possible. That alliance with the right person could change his destiny. I showed him the truth about who Park Dong-min really is. You made him weak. Yuna stood. And weakness in an heir is a disease that spreads. First it's ethical objections to how business is conducted. Then it's questioning the family's methods. Eventually it's full betrayal. Turning evidence over to authorities. Dismantling decades of carefully constructed power. Park Dong-min couldn't allow that. Kira tested her restraints. The chair didn't budge. So this is what? Motivation for Min-Jun to embrace his father's legacy. This is natural selection. Yuna checked her watch. In 5 minutes, Min-Jun will receive your location. He'll come charging in with whatever half-formed rescue plan he's concocted. Park Dong-min will give him a choice. Kill you himself to prove his loyalty. Or watch his father do it while he realizes he's not strong enough to stop it. Either way you die. The only question is whether Min-Jun survives the lesson. He'll kill Park Dong, Kira's voice was certain. The moment he gets the chance. You've underestimated what he's willing to sacrifice. Have we? Yuna's smile widened. Because from where I'm standing, you're the only leverage that matters. Min-Jun spent his entire life trying to earn his father's approval while simultaneously hating everything the man represents. He's torn between duty and desire. Between being the heir or being his own man. You made him believe he could have both. That he could inherit the empire and transform it into something clean. He can. No, he can't. Because empires built on blood stay bloody. You can't wash away 30 years of violence with good intentions. She moved toward the door. I almost feel sorry for you. You seem like a decent person. Smart. Brave. Exactly the kind of woman who'd save a stranger because it was the right thing to do. But decent people don't survive in our world. They get used, broken, discarded. By morning, you'll just be another body in Park Dong-min's ledger. Another black woman whose death gets filed under unsolved and forgotten. The door closed behind her. The lock clicked. The guards resumed their positions. Kira sat in the silence and thought about Imani. About whether she'd felt this kind of fear in her final moments. Whether she'd known death was coming or if the violence had been a surprise. Whether dying knowing you'd fought for truth was comfort or just another way of acknowledging defeat. Her wrists were bleeding where the restraints cut into skin. Her shoulders screamed from the position. But her mind stayed sharp. Calculating. Looking for angles. The room had one door. 2 guards. Concrete walls that wouldn't break. But the ceiling was drop tile. Old construction. The kind that might have crawl spaces above it. Not much of a plan. But something was better than waiting for death. She started working the restraints. Small movements that the guards wouldn't notice. Testing which direction offered the most give. Feeling for any weakness in metal or bolt or chair construction. Minutes crawled past. Her hands went numb. Blood made the restraints slippery. But slowly, impossibly slowly, she felt something shift. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in half a second later. Dim red glow that turned everything the color of arterial spray. The guards moved immediately. One to the door. One toward her. Both drawing weapons. An explosion somewhere above shook dust from the ceiling. Gunfire followed. Shouting. The sound of something large and heavy hitting the ground. Min-Jun had arrived. The guard nearest Kira made a mistake. He came close to check her restraints. Close enough that when she swung her head forward with all her strength, her forehead connected with his nose with a crunch that felt like victory and sounded like breaking cartilage. He staggered. She yanked hard on the restraints and felt the bolt in the chair give way. Her right hand came free. She grabbed the guard's weapon as he fell. Her fingers closing around metal still warm from his grip. The second guard was already turning. Already raising his gun. Already squeezing the trigger. Kira threw herself sideways. The chair, still attached to her left wrist and both ankles, crashed to the floor with her. The bullet sparked off concrete where her head had been a second before. She fired blind. 3 shots that went wide but bought her precious seconds. The guard dove for cover behind the metal table. She used those seconds to yank at the remaining restraints, feeling skin tear, not caring, needing mobility more than she needed blood staying inside her body. The bolt on her left wrist gave. Then her ankles. She rolled behind an overturned shelf as return fire chewed through the space she'd occupied. The emergency lighting made everything shadows and red illumination. Made depth perception a guess. Made every movement feel like gambling with death. The door burst open. Taeyong appeared. Weapon drawn. Face grim. He fired twice. The guard behind the table went down. Then Taeyong was pulling Kira to her feet, pressing a knife into her hand. Min-Jun's upstairs fighting through to Park Dong-min's office. His voice was clipped. Professional. You need to move now. How many? Too many. Park Dong-min had reinforcements waiting. This whole thing was a trap. He pushed her toward the door. Oh, I'll cover your exit. They moved into a hallway that looked like a war zone. Bodies on the ground. Blood on the walls. The sharp chemical smell of gunfire hanging in air that tasted like violence. Somewhere above, more explosions. The building shaking like it was coming apart. Kira followed Taeyong through corridors that twisted in ways designed to disorient. Past rooms she didn't want to think about the purpose of. Upstairs slick with something dark and wet. Her bare feet left bloody prints. Her head rang from where she'd headbutt the guard. Her hands shook with adrenaline and fear and the terrible exhilaration of still being alive. They emerged into what had been the tea house's kitchen. Now it was a combat zone. Overturned equipment. Shattered ceramics. 3 bodies in Park family colors and 2 in Red Phoenix colors. The war between families playing out in real time with kitchen knives and bullets. Through there. Taeyong pointed to a door. Service stairs. They'll take you to the main level. Find Min-Jun, get him out. This building's coming down. What about you? I'm buying you time. He checked his weapon. Tell Min-Jun. Tell him Jay would be proud. Then he was gone. Moving back toward the sounds of gunfire with the kind of courage that came from having something worth dying for. Kira ran up the service stairs. Her lungs burning. Her feet leaving blood trails. Every step a prayer that she'd reach Min-Jun before Park Dong-min did whatever he'd planned as his final lesson. She emerged into the tea house's main level. The elegant space she'd walked through an hour ago was destroyed. Tables overturned. Calligraphy scrolls shredded. The beautiful bamboo plants broken and scattered. Bodies everywhere. Park soldiers. Red Phoenix soldiers. People whose only crime was drinking tea in the wrong place at the wrong time. And at the far end, through the smoke and chaos, she saw him. Min-Jun stood before a set of double doors that probably led to Park Dong-min's private office. His disguise was gone. His face set in lines of absolute determination. Blood streaked his jacket, his or someone else's, Kira couldn't tell. He held a gun in one hand and something that looked like an explosive device in the other. Min-Jun. Her voice cut through the chaos. He turned. Relief flashed across his face for half a second before his mask of control slammed back down. Ura. You need to get out now. This building is coming down. No. Taeyong told me. She crossed to him, stepping over debris and bodies and the shattered remnants of the morning. We leave together or not at all. My father's inside. His voice was flat. This ends today. I'm not walking away while he's still breathing. Then we end it together. She took his free hand. Like we agreed. For Imani. For Jay. For everyone. The double doors exploded outward. Park Dong-min emerged through smoke and splintered wood like a demon summoned from fire. He looked untouched. Immaculate. His hanbok still perfect. His expression carrying that same cold assessment it always did. Behind him Yuna Chen appeared. And behind her men in tactical gear. Professional killers. The kind of backup that suggested this confrontation had been orchestrated as carefully as everything else Park Dong-min did. My son. The elder Park's voice carried across the ruined tea house. You've made quite a mess. This building's been in the family for 20 years. Your uncle opened this tea house with money from our first successful operation in New York. And you're burning it down for what? A woman you've known for less than a day. I'm burning it down because it's built on corpses. Min-Jun raised his gun. Because every brick represents someone you killed or corrupted or destroyed. Because I'm tired of pretending that legacy matters more than morality. Morality. Park Dong-min smiled. The last refuge of the weak. Your mentor at Columbia used that word too. Right before I had him removed from his position for asking too many questions about my donations to the university. All his philosophies about justice and accountability died the moment he realized I could destroy his career with a phone call. Just like you will revert to survival instinct when you realize I'm going to kill her. I'm not whoever you think I should be. Min-Jun's voice stayed level. And I'm not you. I'm the thing that happens when your teachings collide with your failures. When the son you raised to be ruthless realizes that ruthlessness can cut both ways. Then prove it. Park Dong-min spread his arms. Shoot me. End this. Show me you have the strength to kill your own father. Show me you're capable of the violence necessary to hold this empire together. Min-Jun's finger tightened on the trigger. But first, Park Dong-min continued. Let me show you what that violence costs. He nodded to Yuna. She raised her weapon and fired. The bullet took Kira in the shoulder. She felt the impact before the pain. A sledgehammer blow that spun her sideways. Then her nervous system caught up and agony exploded through her body like lightning made solid. She hit the ground. Blood spread across the floor beneath her. Her vision blurred. Through the haze, she saw Min-Jun's face transform from controlled fury into something primal. Something that looked like grief weaponized. Park Dong-min's voice came from very far away. Make your choice, my son. Kill me and she bleeds out while you do. Or drop your weapon and beg me to call a doctor. Either way you lose. Either way you learn that love is the weakness that gets everyone killed. Kira tried to speak. Tried to tell Min-Jun to shoot. To finish it. To not let her death be meaningless. But her voice wouldn't work. Her body felt like it was made of ice and fire and pain. Min-Jun looked at her. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Kira saw his decision crystallize. Saw him understand the same truth she'd learned 6 years ago when Imani died. Sometimes survival meant sacrifice. And sometimes the only way to win was to refuse to play by your enemy's rules. He dropped the gun. Raised the explosive device he'd been holding. And smiled at his father with something that looked like peace. You taught me that power is control. His voice was steady. That the man who cares about nothing is the man who wins. That emotional attachment is fatal in our world. You were right. So I'm going to show you what happens when someone finally internalizes that lesson completely. He pressed the trigger. The explosion was smaller than Kira expected. Controlled. Precise. It took out the support columns beneath Park Dong-min's feet and nothing else. The floor collapsed. The elder Park fell through smoke and rubble into whatever basement level existed below. Yuna fired at Min-Jun. He moved with inhuman speed. Grabbed Kira. Rolled them both behind an overturned table. Return fire came from somewhere. Taeyong's team, Kira realized, finally reaching them. The tactical gear soldiers engaged. The tea house became a battlefield. Stay with me. Min-Jun's hands pressed against her shoulder. His touch gentle despite the chaos. Kira, look at me. Stay present. Did you? Her voice came out wet. Did you kill him? I don't know. I don't care. We're leaving now. He lifted her like she weighed nothing. His strength surprising given he'd been fighting for the last hour. Taeyong appeared, providing cover fire. They moved through smoke and gunfire. Past bodies and rubble. Min-Jun's people formed a protective wedge. The Red Phoenix soldiers fell back under sustained fire. The building groaned around them like a dying animal. They emerged into daylight. The street was chaos. Police sirens approaching. Civilians running. The tea house belching smoke from a dozen broken windows. Min-Jun kept moving. Kept carrying her. Kept putting distance between them and the burning building. Car appeared. Taeyong at the wheel. Min-Jun pushed Kira into the back seat and climbed in after her. The vehicle peeled out before the door fully closed. Hospital. Kira managed. Safe house first. Min-Jun stripped off his jacket, wadded it against her shoulder. We go to a hospital and police get involved. Questions get asked. People die from administrative complications. I have a doctor who won't ask questions. Your father is either dead or will wish he was when I find him. Min-Jun's voice was ice. But right now you're bleeding in my arms and that's all that matters. Everything else is secondary. Kira's vision was graying at the edges. She tried to focus on his face. On the fear there despite his controlled voice. On the way his hands shook slightly as they maintained pressure on her wound. Sorry. The words came out slurred. I should have been faster. Should have seen Yuna's angle. You survived my father's trap. He leaned close. His forehead touching hers. You survived because you're stronger than anyone I've ever met. So stay strong for 10 more minutes. Just 10 more minutes until we reach the doctor. Can you do that? Money. She couldn't finish the thought. Her sister's face swam in her vision. Her smile. Her laugh. The way she'd always believed that truth mattered more than safety. Imani would be proud of you. Min-Jun's voice cracked. She'd be proud that you finished what she started. That you fought monsters and survived. That you're still here despite everything they did to stop you. So stay here with me. Don't you dare die after everything we've been through. The car moved through streets Kira didn't recognize. Her consciousness flickered in and out. Moments of clarity interspersed with darkness. She remembered arriving at a building. Being carried upstairs. A room with medical equipment. A woman with efficient hands and no questions. Cutting away her shirt. The sharp pain of a needle. Someone saying the bullet went through clean, missed the bone. She'll live if we control the bleeding. She remembered Min-Jun's hand holding hers through all of it. Never letting go. Anchoring her to consciousness through sheer force of will. She remembered waking in a bed that wasn't hers. Sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked the city. Her shoulder bandaged and throbbing but no longer bleeding. And Min-Jun asleep in a chair beside her. His hand still holding hers. His face exhausted and beautiful and marked with a pain that went deeper than physical injury. Kira tried to sit up. Her body protested with a wave of agony that made her gasp. Min-Jun woke instantly. His eyes finding hers with desperate intensity. Don't move. Doctor said you need 48 hours of rest minimum. The bullet tore through muscle but missed anything vital. You'll heal but you need to give your body time. His hand cupped her face. How's the pain? Manageable. It was a lie but necessary. Your father. Missing. The explosion took out the floor but there's no body. Either he escaped through tunnels I didn't know about or someone pulled him out before the building collapsed. Min-Jun's jaw tightened. Police are treating the whole thing as gang warfare. Multiple casualties. Both families taking losses. The media's spinning it as traditional organized crime violence. Business as usual in New York. The files. Imani's evidence. Already distributed. Taeyong sent copies to the FBI, the State Attorney General, 3 major newspapers, and a dozen international news organizations. By tonight every transaction will be public. Every connection exposed. Every corrupt politician will be answering questions they can't lie their way out of. He smiled grimly. We may not have killed my father but we destroyed his empire. That's something. Alex closed her eyes. Felt the weight of 6 years lift slightly. Imani would have wanted it this way. Evidence and exposure rather than just violence. Your sister was smarter than me. Min-Jun's thumb traced her cheekbone. I wanted blood. Wanted to kill my father with my own hands. Wanted revenge to be personal and immediate. But you showed me a better way. A way that burns down the system instead of just one man. I didn't show you anything. You chose it yourself. Chose you. His voice dropped. When my father gave me that ultimatum. Shoot him while you bled out or save you. Chose you. I broke 30 years of conditioning. Decades of teaching that loyalty to family was absolute. I chose a woman I'd known for a day over the empire I'd been raised to inherit. Does that make me weak? Makes you human. Kira opened her eyes. Something your father forgot how to be. He slipped the ring on her finger. Fit perfectly. Like it had been made specifically for this moment. For this choice. For this life they were about to build from ashes and evidence and stubborn refusal to let corruption win. They stood at Imani's grave while the morning brightened around them. Two people who'd started as enemies and become something indefinable. Something that looked like love but tasted like justice. Something worth fighting for. The Clarke initiative launches next month. Kira leaned into Min-Jun's shoulder. Full funding for investigative journalism. Protection for whistleblowers. Legal support for people exposing corruption. Everything Imani wanted to do we're making real. And we're doing it together. Min-Jun kissed the top of her head. No more fighting alone. No more sacrificing ourselves for abstract ideals. We protect each other and we burn down anyone who tries to stop us. That's very romantic in a terrifying sort of way. I'm a work in progress. His arms wrapped around her. Give me time. Eventually I might learn how to be romantic without the death threats. 6 months after that, they stood on a rooftop garden at sunset. The city spread before them in golden shadow. Min-Jun was cooking. Cooking. Following a recipe his uncle had written down years ago. Kira watched him move around their makeshift kitchen with a kind of domestic contentment that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Do you ever miss it? She asked. Power. Fear. The empire. Only when it's too quiet. He added gachuguru to whatever was simmering on the portable stove. Only when I forget what it costs to walk away. Then I look at you and remember that some things are worth more than empires. That's definitely growth. She moved to him. Slipped her arms around his waist. The Min-Jun I met would never have admitted that. The Min-Jun you met was dying by inches and calling it strength. He turned in her embrace. You showed me the difference between surviving and living. Between power and peace. Between being my father's weapon and being my own man. I didn't show you anything. You chose it. Chose you. His lips found hers. Every day. Every moment. Every time the old life tries to pull me back, I choose you instead. They ate dinner as the sun set. Talked about the latest exposés from the initiative. About the politicians scrambling to distance themselves from the Parkshan scandal. About the 4 other crime families they'd quietly begun investigating. About building something that mattered from the ruins of what had been. Later, in the dark warmth of their bed, Kira traced the scars on Min-Jun's chest. Each one a story. Each one a lesson in survival. Each one proof that he'd lived through things that should have killed him. Do you think this is what Imani wanted? She whispered. When she started investigating. Did she imagine something like this? I think she wanted truth to matter more than power. Min-Jun's fingers threaded through her hair. She wanted a world where corruption couldn't hide behind money and connections. Where justice meant something beyond whatever the powerful decided it meant. We're building that. One investigation at a time. One exposed politician at a time. One dismantled crime family at a time. Slow work. The best things are. He pulled her closer. Fast burns hot and dies quick. We're building something meant to outlast us. Something that'll still be fighting corruption long after we're gone. That's worth being patient for. Kira closed her eyes. Let herself feel the warmth of him. The steady beat of his heart. The peace that came from choosing each other despite everything that said they shouldn't. Once she'd whispered for him to run. Now they walked together toward a life they'd built from ashes and evidence and stubborn love that refused to quit. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge was peace. Sometimes the greatest victory was surviving long enough to see your enemies fall. Sometimes the best way to honor the dead was by living fiercely in the light they died trying to create. Kira thought about Imani. About what she'd say if she could see her now. Married to a reformed crime lord. Running an investigative initiative funded by liquidated Mafia assets. Fighting the same corruption she died exposing. but doing it with backup and weapons and the kind of dangerous love that transformed everything. She thought her sister would approve. Or at least understand. The work wasn't finished. Might never be finished. There would always be more corruption to expose. More powerful people trying to escape consequences. More fights worth having. But for tonight, in the dark warmth of their rooftop sanctuary, Kira let herself simply be. Let herself exist in this moment of hard-won peace. Let herself love the man beside her without calculating the cost or measuring the risk. Tomorrow they'd go back to war. Tonight they'd remember what they were fighting for. Each other. Justice. Truth. The belief that some things were worth dying for and even more worth living for. Outside, New York hummed with life. Millions of stories intersecting. Millions of choices being made. Millions of people living in the spaces between corruption and justice. Trying to survive in a city that ate the weak and crowned the ruthless. But on this rooftop, in this moment, two people who'd survived the unsurvivable held each other close and remembered that sometimes, just sometimes the good guys won. Not cleanly. Not perfectly. Not without scars and blood and sacrifice. But they won. And that had to be enough. It was enough. Thank you for staying until the end, my beautiful souls. That means more than you think. If this story touched something inside you, if Kira and Min-Jun's journey resonated with your spirit, then subscribe right now. Hit that like button. And tell me in the comments what you felt. Which moment made your heart race? When did you hold your breath? I read every single one of your comments because this isn't just storytelling. It's connection. It's building something together in the dark. And if you're ready for the next journey, don't wander too far. The next story is already waiting. And it's going to take you somewhere you've never been before. Until then, remember that sometimes the greatest love stories are written in blood and redemption. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose hope when the world demands cynicism. And sometimes, just sometimes, two broken people can build something beautiful from the ruins. Stay beautiful. Stay strong. And I'll see you in the next story.